You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. This is Making Tracks. Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
That's not true. That's impossible.
So we're joined on this episode of Making Tracks by Mike Schreiner. Mike, you will know for working for rose-uh-velts, that's RSVLTS. They're the shirt company right now. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Mark. This is exciting. It's been a long time coming.
I was going to say, we've wanted to do this forever and we've never quite made it happen.
We've been talking for over a year at this point, and life gets in the way, but I'm glad to make it happen.
We're here now. We're here to talk. So first things first, your journey, your personal journey. When did you first get into Star Wars?
Since as long as I can remember. It's actually a funny little anecdotal thing. My dad, still this day, always says that for whatever reason, this is, I'm dating myself, but VHS tapes, he basically said we wore out. I think it started with Return of the Jedi, but because that's as far as I remember. But he said basically I just kept watching them over and over, that they had to keep going out and buying new VHS tapes because I just kept wearing them out for whatever reason. So, in a way that kind of started the love, and it's carried through even to this day.
And what do you think it was about Star Wars that sort of gripped you as a kid? Do you think it was just the colourful nature of it, the action? What was it?
I think it was the characters. It's like the storytelling. I mean, that's a word we use, pretty widely now. But Lucas was a master at storytelling, right? And I think it just captivated me as a kid, and I was just enamored by like the different characters. And I've always been a big Boba Fett guy, and I think these masked, not even villains, just bounty hunters and Darth Vader, down to R2-D2 and C-3PO. It's just these range of characters and creatures and broad universe. Like, it's so cool. And I think that just kind of captivated me and brought me in from young eyes to adult eyes even.
And thankfully, the young eyes never grow up when you're a Star Wars fan. They're still young eyes now, aren't they?
Exactly.
So tell us a little bit about the company. What's the history of rose-uh-velts? Where did it get its start?
Yeah, so we've been around a little bit over a decade. It started off as like a men's general interest website, really, where the founders, John and Steve, they're two Seton Hall University buddies. And they had this dream of, creating content for, not only just like the brand itself, like general interest things. Like, I always called it kind of like a GQ Lite in a way, where it was fashion and, food and sports and fun, up and coming, like things that were trending as well. But they had this idea of creating content not only for the brand itself, but for other brands. And they really started there. And it was just just like an everyday, website, doing cool little fun videos and, doing little like road trips and challenges and all that. And over time, they just started kind of leaning into apparel and gear, and from there just started to blossom. And Star Wars came a little bit later, but the two guys are quite genius with their outputs, and they had this vision and just like creating apparel from a different perspective, and it's since blossomed from there. As you know, Mark, very well. It doesn't stop, whether it's our own personal items, because we do licensed and unlicensed gear. So whether it's our own designs to, up to the top with Star Wars, Marvel, Nickelodeon, you name it, we always like to have like a little bit of a twist and a different perspective when it comes to working with studios and other IP.
It's fascinating that you sort of explain the history in the way that it's developed, because coming at it from fairly recently, obviously from Fantha Tracks, and not knowing an awful lot about you before we got talking, there's very much that come in and be a part of the team feel about rose-uh-velts. Just as a brand, it feels very inclusive, very welcoming. Is that something that came about organically? Clearly you nurture that. How did that sort of develop?
That's Steve and John's nature. And, and they're very humble, and, they don't see it that way, but start from the top and also from the center, from as like the nucleus, that's kind of the culture they've built. And, I've known those guys as long as the company's been around. Just, I worked in parallel universe, but it kind of infuses itself into everybody here. We want to work with people that are passionate about not only just pop culture, but just life and culture in general. And we truly feel that, our fans and, consumers in general feel that in the designs and the outputs as well. And down to even hanging out with us, we're doing a ton of Comic Cons and a ton of events. And, even getting to know you, Mark, like you summed it up well. It's just like, we want other people to be a part of the team as well. And anybody that purchases something of ours or sports it and wears it with pride, we want them to feel like they're a part of the brand at all levels.
With Lucasfilm, with Star Wars, how did that relationship develop? Where was the sort of the first step on the ladder to where you are now with this incredible array of Star Wars clothing?
Yeah, so it all started with Disney. I think the guys' first foray into it, the brand, I should say, it started with Pixar. And when I first joined a little over 3 years ago, I remember the first thing I worked on was the movie Soul, but which was great, and we made this really awesome like Soul Cat shirt, which again, the cat had such a very limited role in the film itself, important role, but a limited role. But we created this shirt, and it was one of these shirts that was just like, I remember the Pixar and Disney crew were like, oh, that's such a cool interpretation, the way you did it. Even though that stemmed quickly over into Star Wars and Marvel, I think the first things the guys were working on was Toy Story. And that's where we really leaned in and did some really incredible work. And if you go back, and I think we still have some on the site today, but we restock pretty often. But if you see some of our original Toy Story ones, or even some of our fringe ones that are really kind of wacky, cool designs, I think that's where, it all started with that Disney and Pixar relationship, and them seeing like, wow, these guys are just, they're just a little, they think and are doing things just a little bit differently. And, and actually for Star Wars, the first thing we worked on was Mandalorian 2 seasons ago. And even that apparel today, shorts, koozies, shirts, obviously the button downs, those are some of our strongest works that people absolutely clam over.
This is Susanna Malik from Mandalorian and Boba Fett, and this is Fanta Tracks. Is it Fanta Track? I'm blind. I couldn't read it. Fanta.
I'm still going to use that.
Are you? Then use it. Even like this dumb broad can't speak English.
Because Roosevelt's has developed this style, how do you discern what works as a shirt for you guys? Because it's not just delivering something for an IP, be it Star Wars, indie, or anything else. It definitely feels like it's come from you guys. You can't mistake another shirt for a Roosevelt shirt. So how do you guys make that become its own thing?
It's tough to say because I don't know. It's a feeling. I do give a lot of credit to John and one of the co-founders, John, and the whole design team, because it's not just John that does this, but we all brainstorm together. Typically on Fridays in the afternoons, we all get together and brainstorm, obviously months out, but it's input from everyone. And it's like, oh, what about that? Like, I wish you could see it. I'm actually wearing a shirt right now from our most recent May the 4th collection, which is the Admiral Akbar. It's a trap, which, as we all know, that memorable scene, but which turned into a meme. And then we were all kind of brainstorming. We're like, how can we bring this meme to life? It's literally just a GIF or a still from the movie that turned into a meme. But the way he and the crew reinterpreted it, just from it almost looks like a pop culture, very colory, interpretation of it. And that's like kind of the genius, where it's like, it's just mashing together things and molding together different ideas. And the outputs are always just beautiful. I'm always in awe of how we kind of take this seed of an idea and blossom it into a beautiful flower.
You say about a Friday night brainstorming, which makes all the sense, because all the time there's new content from all sorts of places coming out. And there are moments like It's a Trap or Negan with the baseball bat or whatever it might be across any sort of IP. How on point are you, and how on point do you think you need to be to sort of pick out these little moments? Because it's not always the thing you expect, is it?
That's also tough to answer, because again, I give these guys so much credit because I just don't know the way their minds think is awesome, because it's all pop culture and we want to stay on trend, but at the same time, it's like we want to kind of reinvent it sometimes too, because that's what keeps things interesting. And And again, I can't speak for how these guys come up with these ideas. We're just out there throwing, typical brainstorm style, throwing some stuff at the wall, seeing what sticks. But these guys will take these nuggets and the things they create are just like awe-inspiring, which, I encourage everybody listening, go online and just, even go to the rose-uh-velts section itself and just see how we reinterpret some of these like everyday things into just a new way of looking at it, I would say.
You mentioned that you get out to a lot of events and increasingly so. Obviously, you were at Star Wars Celebration Europe. You were at New York Comic Con last year, and hopefully again this year. And you really are getting out there and doing the events and sort of face to face with people. And you're a very conversational crowd, so that works. That obviously works well for you. But one of the things that you do that particularly Star Wars fans have enjoyed is that you do these event exclusives. So there was Celebration exclusive, New York Comic Con, San Diego, whatever it may be. How do you decide what would become an event exclusive as opposed to sort of a mainline release? Where's the sort of the line between the two?
Yeah, there's a lot of deliberation around that. And it's kind of funny because we see it from all different sides, and there's no real science to it, to be honest, Mark. A lot of times, like, we're looking at something and we're like, would the masses want this? And the answer is always like, probably, or maybe, or yes. But then we look at something and, and as we know from these expos and Comic Cons and everything, the collectability side of things, it tears us up sometimes because we don't want to not have something that everybody can get. But sometimes we're like, man, this design, I should say, for this crowd will go crazy. Like the things that we have planned for this year's San Diego Comic-Con, because we are going to be again in the Lucasfilm Pavilion. Last year was the first time we dipped our toes in it. And now what we saw and now that we kind of know who's going to be there and what they're expecting, the things we're bringing are going to be absolutely incredible. Tough decisions were made because we know there's going to be some people from the outside looking in being like, damn it, I want that. But that kind of adds to the allure of some things too, because then we encourage the community to talk together, to help each other out, because then you have people saying like, the Rancor is my favorite character of all time. How do I get that Rancor shirt? Which is what we had last year at San Diego Comic-Con. And, and we just get the community kind of engaging with each other, helping each other out. I'm a 2XL. I'm a medium. Let's trade, let's swap. That's what we hope to see, even though it does sometimes tear us up that we're going to probably disappoint somebody that's in, Kansas or Ohio that just can't get to San Diego.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video, and social media feeds, bookmark fanthatracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
You've created, and whether it's by design or whether it's happened on its own, I guess it doesn't really matter, but you've created this desirability for different shirts and different types of designs that you've got. There's Facebook groups and there's different groups online that literally just talk and discuss what stuff you've got coming out. So that seems to be very much part of the whole of what Rose-uh-velts is about, isn't it?
That's also funny because it's kind of taken its own form, but so John's the creative director and the co-founder, the other co-founder, Steve, that's kind of been his vision from the start. So I got to give credit to him as well. It has kind of taken its own form because the original intention was not for it to become collectability. It was just, how do we take the movies and the scenes and the things that we love, from the fandoms we love, and this is from the origin of the brand, and put them on people's backs, and something that they're proud to wear, that starts a conversation that can, foster some, inclusivity with somebody else that's in the room that may or may not, be as bold or as loud as someone else, but you can find that commonality and have that conversation. That was the original intention. And then it's just starting to kind of take its own form where, now we're kind of like, it kind of goes back to like the kills us sometimes, but so many people wanted that shirt. Maybe we just don't bring it back for ever or for a couple of years, or I don't know, because then you get people that are so excited and it's like, well, we want everybody to have it. When that person finally that really wants that shirt gets their hands on it, it's like Christmas every day. So, there's really no rhyme or reason to it. Sometimes it's a gut feeling, but it just kind of became this thing that we've kind of leaned into and, for better or worse, but typically always for the best.
One of the things you've done that I really do think is very cool, and it's kind of on that topic of certain designs being out there, you did the holiday special Boba Fett shirt in, I believe it was mint green, and then one of the exclusives was in purple. You did it again this year with the Ewok Jedi shirt. You did it in green and in purple colour. So I guess if some people can't get one specific one, there's always a backup option, slightly different colour. But I love the way that you give people that option. Not at least, you know what I mean? That sounds wrong, but you're giving people options, different colors of the shirt.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially for some designs, we're like, this is just too good not to do an inverse colorway or, add multiple colorways. The most recent May the 4th collection, we actually did 3 different colorways. One that was an in-store exclusive that you can only get at like mom and pop shops across the US. We did the direct-to-consumer widespread one, and then also one that was just at a fan expo in Calgary. And it's called Trilogy's End. And we just played with the colors a little bit. And each one has its own little bit of a personality. And those that were able to get one in Canada, it was a little bit grayer of a colorway. That's kind of like within your palette. Somebody's holding on to that, but they got the DTC one or they didn't get the DTC one. They could easily swap those out. And I think that's kind of part of it. And again, it goes back to that community and just having a conversation. The Boba Fett one you're talking about.
Yeah.
The mint green one is beautiful. The purple one is a lot darker and a little bit more brooding, but that's like anything when it comes to art. And, one might appeal to someone else. So sometimes we're just like, this is just too good just to leave alone. Let's see if we created like an alt version. It might just appeal to someone somewhere else.
With certain IPs, I guess you kind of want to stick to the classic elements of a Deadpool or of a Rick and Morty. But when you get to Star Wars, there's so much Star Wars. I'm making an assumption. I don't know. Do you have access to all corners of the Star Wars galaxy? Can you do something from, if you wanted to, I don't know, Resistance and then Droids and then the original trilogy? How broad is that scope of what you can do?
Each license, each studio is a little different on like their IP, what you can or cannot do, obviously, what reach of the universe can you go. Disney and Star Wars and Marvel and you name it under the umbrella. They're amazing to work with. Like they let us kind of play a little bit to a certain degree, obviously following the rules, but the outer rim is the limit and maybe even beyond because they love when we play a little bit. We have some shirts where it reinterprets a stormtrooper's day off almost. And it's them like taking target practice, steaming their closet full of the same outfit. We introduce an idea like that and they kind of laugh and they're like, yep, as long as this is, theoretically within the universe, then, have fun with it, guys. So, it's fun when you can be playful with that. So to your point, there's so much we can do. And we always like look forward to seeing what else is possible that we can unearth.
And can you be too niche, especially in Star Wars when there's so much? In Star Wars, it's second guy from the right in this crowd scene you see for 3 seconds. Someone's going to be into that character. So can you be too niche with Star Wars?
I mean, I personally don't think so. I'm also a massive fan like you, Mark. So I don't think we can. But, at a certain point, we always want to make sure that it's something that someone wants to wear. Like we're still making apparel. If it gets too niche, maybe somebody might be like, I don't know about that, but you just never know. So we want to keep making sure that, we give something we provide a collection and or collections that appeal to everyone, but we definitely, for Star Wars, unlike some of the other properties, we want to make sure that, we go a little deep too. So and a great example of that is the Pelimato shirt that we had from last San Diego Comic-Con. Some people were just like, what the heck is that? Other people were like, oh my Lord, thank the maker. I friggin' need that shirt because and you could just see it in their eyes, like, what the hell? And actually one person we were talking to was like, you're literally, the Rose-uh-velts are the only company crazy enough to make that shirt. So to your point, eating my words here, like for us, it's okay to go a little niche, but like I said, at the end of the day, we always are like, we just want to make sure somebody wears it. We don't want to just to kind of be like, oh, wow, that's way too out there.
This is Steve Bloom, voice of Zebralios, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks. Caravast. May the force be with you.
It's June now, so we've got Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny coming at the end of the month. Could you tell us a little bit about your Indiana Jones range?
Yeah, I mean, we just launched that collection, I think a couple weeks ago, which was a huge, massive collection of ours. And it's one of those things too, where it's like, we know it's such a storied property. It has just as much love to certain, within certain circles as a Star Wars, maybe not as vast as Star Wars, but that love still runs deep. And, and it was our first time dropping that collection. So we just, you never know sometimes how the reception is going to be. And it was insane. The reception we saw with that. And I think it was one of our biggest debut collections ever. I think we had 7 shirts, including one of our all-day polos. So it was a bespoke polo that was that design is only in the polo, and that even absolutely crushed. So, you just never know format or how people are going to receive it, but wow, that was great. And I think, if you were to go online and look at the collection, it again has a little bit of something for everyone, down to topography and maps and kind of the fun, stuff that, indie is known for. But then, you also get, the mashups and the things that, iconography that, is really popular as well. So really just making sure there's something in there for everyone, but also kind of going a couple layers deep as well.
You came over, as I mentioned earlier, for Celebration Europe. How was the show for you guys?
It was everything we wanted to be, and then more. We were stunned at the reception because, like you mentioned, we just started being able to ship internationally. Right now, Australia and UK, looking at some other places as well. So that's actively in motion. That was one of our biggest hurdles. Was the internet has no borders, right? So people know of us. They're seeing us. They're seeing you, Mark, wearing these things, us talking about it. And then it's like, oh, but we can't get this unless we have a friend, in the US or wherever. So we just had no idea how people were going to receive us. And it was overwhelmingly amazing. It was so awe-inspiring. Just people come up being like, we've been waiting for you. And that's why we have every one of our booths, selling shirts is great. But what we really want people to do is try the shirt, feel the quality of the fabric. Trying is believing when it comes to our gear, because you see something on the internet, you just don't know what it is. And then you see it in person, and then you hold it up, you touch it, you put it on, you're like, oh, that's the perfect fit. Now you're off to the races. To us, it's important that we get in front of people for that exact reason. And that was exactly what the show was for us. And it was so humbling and awe-inspiring, like I said, just to see people come over and being like, I've been seeing you and I'm so glad you're here. So, we're stoked for that, and where our journey continues in the UK and beyond.
You certainly get a great reaction over here. There's so many people now increasingly that we see around at UK events wearing your shirt. So that's just fantastic. You mentioned San Diego Comic-Con. What other stuff have you got coming up this year?
San Diego, beyond that, we're obviously super stoked for the news of this is waiting on the line for Celebration and Tokyo, which will be really cool. We're trying to spread across the country and beyond, because I think a lot of times it ends up, different cons and fests ends up being along the coast, but we're trying to hit some things in between, looking at some smaller festivals as well. Like I mentioned previously, we've been going up into Canada as well. We have Toronto on the horizon very soon as well, right after San Diego. So yeah, really just trying to expand our footprint and get in front of more fans, like we're saying, just to, again, feel and kind of see everything in person.
How long do fans have to wait for the next drop of Star Wars product?
Well, we have a very special Father's Day, Star Wars I Am Your Father's Day collection coming out. So that will hit, I believe, on the 18th or 19th. I'll have the calendar in front of me, of June. Right after that is the San Diego Comic-Con, which will have exclusives, but we also will have a parallel DTC launch as well, with a huge, awesome, beautiful collection there. And then, we typically like to do something closer to the holidays that has a little bit more of a seasonal theme to it. But, we might have a couple little surprises pop up here and there that we're always scheming, Mark, as you know.
Well, I'm glad you've been scheming with us today. Really appreciate you giving us the time. It's so long overdue. So we will make sure it's not this long until we speak again. But Mike, thanks for joining us on the show. Really appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to Making Tracks. If you want to be a part of the action and stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news, visit fanthatracks.com or check out the free Fanthatracks app for the App Store to follow us on your mobile device. You can reach out to us and send in your listeners' questions by emailing radio@fanthatracks.com. Comment, like and share on any of our social media feeds at Fanthatracks, and be sure to subscribe, leave a review, preferably a 5-star one, on Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcatcher or smart speaker of choice. And as always, thanks to James Semple for composing the Fanthatracks intro, Adam O'Brien for our Making Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. Remember, tune in to Good Morning Tatooine. It's live Sunday evenings at 9 o'clock UK, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific on Facebook and YouTube. And check out our Fanthatracks Radio Friday night rotation every Friday night at 7 p.m. UK time for new episodes of The Phantom from Down Under, Planet Leia, Desert Planet Discs, Start Your Engines, Collecting Tracks, Cannon Fodder, and special episodes of Making Tracks. And that's me done for this episode.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's another episode of Making Tracks.